PastureBase app.
Thanks very much, Caroline, and good morning, everybody, from wet and windy Ireland this morning. It's the temperature is about 12 degrees, but we've had a lot of rain overnight, which isn't ideal as cows are starting to calve on Irish dairy farms. And ideally, cows will go to grass as they calve in Ireland in the springtime of the year. See that someone says even from Toulouse. Thanks, Jocelyn. So I'd like to introduce you to Joseph or Joe Dunphy. Joe is a member of the staff in Teagasc, and he deals exclusively with grass-based dairy farms and works with them to promote the use of PastureBase, which is an application that we've developed in Ireland for Irish dairy farmers to use. And the program is used to help farmers to make better decisions around how they manage their grass throughout the grazing season. So Joe, you're very welcome to our webinar here this morning, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks a million for the welcome, George. Good morning to everyone that's on the webinar.
So maybe you'll take us through your presentation, Joe, and explain in a little more detail about PastureBase.
Perfect, George. Thanks a million. So look, I suppose just from the outset, you know, Ireland, we're largely reliant on a grass-based system, which does in fairness gives us a competitive advantage because of purely from a grass being such a low cost base. If we take, for example, the last couple of years, and I suppose why our organisation, why Teagasc continues to focus on how we can utilise as much pasture as possible, you know, grazing management has never been more important. So since 2021, we've seen a 54% increase in feed costs on Irish farms. So we know we're after with the war and a couple of different things that's going on, the alternatives to graze pasture are increasingly unaffordable. We've had very high meal price here over the last couple of years. Contractors, you know, in terms of bringing in feed from outside the farms in the form of grass silage, the increase in costs of that. So if we look there, feed and fertilizer, and then obviously fertilizer being high as well, feed and fertilizer accounted for about 15 cents a litre of costs in 2022. So it's very, very important that we, I suppose, get back to basics and, you know, focus on what gives us that competitive edge, which is grazing management. The last point on it as well, George, is that if we look at the national stats from 2012 to 22, we can see milk fat plus protein, the performance per cow has gone up from 350 on a national average to 441, and milk and platform stocking rates have, you know, gone from 2 to 2.7. So our cows are eating more, we're stocked higher on milk and platforms, so it's absolutely vital that we get the grazing management correct on a farm.
Hold on now, Joe. You've an awful lot of stuff in that slide, and I just want to explain to people a little more about what's going on. If we look at the columns there in the first table, and if we look at grazed grass, so what you're showing here under the grazed grass heading is that in 2013, the costs of grazed grass were about €70 per tonne of dry matter. And they had increased in 2023 from 70 to around €100 per tonne of dry matter. Isn't that correct?
Correct, yes.
And over on the right-hand side of that graph, Joseph, if we look at the cost of purchase concentrate, in 2013, that was in the order of €270 per tonne of dry matter. But by 2023, that had increased to between 450 and 500 euro per tonne of dry matter. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So as we said, we're an island. Everything, a lot of our feed needs to come in, George. So it's quite a costly exercise.
So even though costs have increased, the cost of grazed grass is far less than the cost of purchased concentrate feed.
Correct.
Just explain then what's milk solids, because I'd say our listeners will be more used to hearing about liters of milk than about milk solids. So you've fat plus protein and kilos. What would that equate to? What's that equal to in liters, broadly speaking, Joseph?
Yeah, so well, it'd be in around. How do you mean, George? Well, you're taken from a fat and a protein point of view, you know, in terms
Yeah.
of percentages, you know, you're probably looking at probably in around, oh, sorry, about 5,500 liters.
Yeah, in 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was actually much less than that in 2012. So this is only, so compared to maybe the 10,000 litre yields that farmers on the continent are experiencing, our volume of milk supplied per cow is considerably lower. But it's the cost saving that's making us profitable. It's not it, basically, Joseph.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. What then is the overall SR? What do you mean by that, Joseph?
Sorry.
Joe.
The overall stocking rate on farm has, in terms of the overall stocking rate, has largely remained similar from 17 to 22, which means there is more outside, there's more land away from the grazing platform, but
Yeah.
the milking platforms are higher stocked.
And just explain what the milking platform is. Joe, what is the milking platform then?
The milking platform, George, is anywhere essentially that the cows can walk to and graze.
Okay. So if we could be farming 100 hectares and have 100 dairy cows, so our stocking rate might be one cow per hectare, but our milking platform, if it's 40 hectares, it's the area, it would be stocked at 2.5 per hectare.
Yes.
Okay, that's great, Joe.
So,
thanks very much. There's an awful lot of stuff in that slide, but it's very important to contextualize the importance of why we're focusing so much on PastureBase and why it's important.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joseph.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah. No, it's extremely important, and yeah, as you said, and then bringing it on to PastureBase Ireland, then I suppose that the national, we call we're kind of going to break it down roughly into two areas. I suppose firstly, it's a national grassland database. So all the information that comes off Irish farms come back into that database. That then, if we look at the last point on the page, that data is available for annual, month, and week basis for researchers, farmers, and the industry. Okay. And also then it's a decision support tool. Okay. So when we do our farm covers, as we do our measurements, our weekly measurements on farm, we put in our fertilizer, all that sort of stuff. It helps to make decisions on farm. Okay. So it's kind of it's excellent for the farmer in terms of making weekly decisions, but it's also very good from Teagasc, from a national advisory organization point of view, to, I suppose, see where trends are going in agriculture, how the grass supply is that week on farm, and we can then tweak our advice from that.
Okay.
So
very good. Excellent.
So we've about,
okay, Joe.
Yeah, we've about 3,500 farmers recording over 10 covers in 2022. And we'd have a lot more recording slightly under 10 as well.
Okay. So they're mostly dairy farmers. So it's about roughly 20% of the national dairy farming population who are regularly using the PastureBase tool.
Correct. Yeah. So in terms of grass production, I'm just going to run through a couple of slides here there on I suppose the grass production. So if we take, for example, what this information gives us, okay, so this is a matched sample of farmers who have been with us from the very start, and we can see trends. So if we look over on the right hand side, we can see total dry matter production per hectare. Okay, so we can kind of see from the years from 2013 there to 2023, 10 years for people that are recording what I would call 30 covers or 30 farm walks on the farm. Yes. We can see what the tonnage, what tonnage they are growing. Okay, so there's something there.
Go on, Joe, you're grand.
Yeah. Okay, so just say for instance 2022 there, you know, maybe a drought year, which affected large parts, especially the southern and the eastern parts of the country. You know, 11.7 ton. You know, and we're back up then another 1.5 for 1.3. Sorry, 1.3 ton of no, sorry, less. We're back up another 0.7 of a ton of dry matter there by in 2023 as well. So we can see all these trends through PastureBase. Okay.
What you're saying, Joseph, is that in grass-based dairy systems or in pasture farms like these, there's quite a bit of variation from year to year in the total quantity of grass that's being grown on Irish farms. And we're depending on the kind of seasonal variation for that. It's caused by seasonal variation.
Yeah. And especially, George, over the last couple of years, we say the last 5 years, there's probably particular areas of the country that are probably hitting more droughts or dry periods than there were before, which is probably affecting things too. So yeah, again, but this allows us, to change, because we have this up-to-date information all the time. We have it on a weekly basis. It allows us to change our management, our advice to farmers, and to maybe get in ahead of any issues before they happen.
Okay.
So again, very, very quickly, this is, a breakdown by county, so we can kind of we can see different trends from different counties. So within Ireland, so we can with the information can be broken down whatever way we want. Okay, so there's just an example. Carlow would be quite a dry, in general, would be quite a dry county, which this 2022's data, 10 ton of dry matter. You would like to see that a couple of tons higher, but the drought affected it fairly badly. Okay, whereas maybe some of the wetter counties performed better. Okay, so the yellow bar there is grazing, and the kind of pinky bar then is the silage proportion. So we might have a small bit of silage taken on a milking platform, in surplus feed that's not, that wasn't needed for grazing. So that kind of adds on to what was what was grazed by the cow.
It looks from that slide, Joe, as if there's not very much silage being made on those farms.
Yes, George. Yeah, depending on the stocking rate, if there's some of the higher stock farms will be making very little, so they will be making maybe some surplus bales. Other farmers with slightly lower stocking rates may be closing up maybe 10% of the milking platform for a first cut of silage, a large first cut of silage, and around the 20th of May, and then it may be grazed for the remainder of the year.
But those figures you're quoting are for the milking platform, where the cows are being grazed, and not the whole farm as such. Yeah.
Okay. Correct. Yes.
So most of the silage is coming from other blocks of land, and not where the cows are being grazed.
Yes, correct. Especially as stock rates have increased over the last 6 or 7 years, we've seen that trend a little bit more. Okay, so again, look at very, very simple. We won't dwell on this one too much, but again, just back to the national growth curve, because so you can see there, 2022, a dry August, and we can see that on average, the country, we dropped down to about 30-something kilos of growth on average. Whereas if we take 2023, not as much of a drought, no drought pressure there. We were kind of growing double that throughout that August period. That has huge implications for the feed that's produced on our dairy farms. Throughout that time. August is a very, very important month in terms of building grass, building pasture on the farm for the autumn. So, when we don't get growth rates like that, it has huge implications and adds cost to the system. So we can see all this stuff can be seen through PastureBase, through all the people that are measuring grass weekly.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, Joseph, what it's showing is that there can be substantial variation from year to year in pasture growth rates throughout the year.
Yeah, and I suppose, George, it kind of comes back to saying that just because you had a super year last year and you've done your 30 measures, that you just can't forget about it. This is an ongoing thing. You need to record. What we would say is we need to do 30 measures or 30 farm walks per year to really to really build up a bank of information on PastureBase for your farm, and then that allows you to make the management decisions needed as you go along.
Joseph, how are farmers, a question coming in there, how are farmers assessing the cover of grass on their farms? Are they using plate meters, or are they what we call eyeballing? Or maybe to explain what eyeballing is.
Yeah, so I suppose we'll probably look at that. There's probably three main, the three main. So you have a traditional cut and weigh method. Okay, so you have your quadrant and your shears and a little weighing scales and a plastic bag. I have a picture of it at the end, anyways, just to show you. So that'd be traditional, quite low cost. For 70 or 80 euros, you can kind of get yourself going on a grass measuring. Then the plate meter or grasshopper would be quite a little bit more advanced in terms of, well, I suppose especially the electronic one that does the calculations for you. They're probably 400 or 500 euro. Grasshopper, then I suppose they're up in the high, I suppose it's 800 or 900 now, George, I think, maybe over 1,000. And then what tends to happen then is maybe people who are very, very comfortable with cut and weigh, what they might do is they might eyeball a few paddocks, George, on the rotation. So they might cut some of their heavier paddocks, and then cut and weigh some of the heavier paddocks, and then maybe eyeball some of the lower covers.
So they'll do a visual assessment of the other paddocks to estimate. And where are they getting the information about dry matter from to calculate the dry matter content of this sward?
So George, the dry matter content would come from the research state, we call it the research centres in Teagasc. So for the West, Athenry, they come weekly, and they come into We Have a Grass 10 newsletter that comes out every week, where all the dry matters are published, and again out on social media as well. So we would try for every Tuesday that we would have 4 or 5 dry matter results for the West, the Southwest, the East, and the Midlands, and or the slightly north of Midlands, and that kind of, we have dry matters in, weekly dry matters to make decisions when you're going around doing your grass walk.
So farmers can use those notifications to take an assessment of what their own dry matter on the farm is.
Yes,
and just for the listeners' information, Joseph, the grasshopper is a kind of an electronic version of the plate meter that has a GPS locator on it, and it'll do the recording for you automatically and link into the PastureBase application.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very good tool, but again, is on the expensive side. So, so I suppose, look, we talked about the database, what it offers, having all that information there. We'll come to the farmer point of it then. So again, as I said, it's a grassland management decision support tool. What we want is quantity of grass or pasture on the farm, but also quality as we come. So quantity at the shoulders of the year, and I mean the shoulders of the year, would be in the spring and the autumn. We need to have feed on the farm, and then in the summertime, when we're on fast high growth rates, especially in the early summer, it's important to keep grass quality under control. Okay, so again, in low growth periods in the spring and the autumn, we need to watch quantity, and summer, when grass growth is high, we watch quality, and this is where PastureBase comes to the fore.
So typically, Joseph, spring is February through to around the 10th of April, and autumn probably sometime in middle of August, is it? From middle of August to the end of the grazing season. And the grazing season will run in Ireland typically to around the early to mid-November.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it gives us, allows us. There's different challenges at different times of the year, but if we're consistent with PastureBase and we do our measures, we will have and use the different tools that are available there. It will help us throughout the year.
Okay.
So again, the tools available there for farmers to accurately measure grass, as we just talked about there a minute ago. So this is an example of a plate meter. Okay, so that's a basic plate meter. Okay, and so I suppose our challenge from what we're seeing is that how can we get the farmer that is measuring 15 times per year, how can we get that farmer to 30? Okay, or the farmer that's measuring 10, how can we get them to 30? Okay, so because we see that when we go over, we'll call it 28, 29, 30, and we'd have some people who are measuring 50 measures, because once they get it into their head that that's the decision-making process on their farm every week, it nearly becomes like an addiction to them, that they must walk their farm and measure their farm. So we would have people that, you know, are measuring the last 15, 18, 20 years with the predecessor of PastureBase, and it's just an absolute habit now. It's just an automatic thing on a Monday morning that they do on their farm. They go and walk their paddocks, and it sets them up for the week, George.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so I suppose this is an example of what we call, so this, when it comes back to farmers making decisions on their farm, this is for a farmer who has completed, I think he completed 42 walks last year. Okay, so essentially from left to right, it has ranked his paddocks in order of which paddocks produce the most amount of pasture to the paddocks that produce the lowest amount of pasture. Okay. And the reason we can get this, George, is because if we take, for example, this paddock here, which I'm up now, is paddock 14, which is down in the lower third, if we'd like to call it. When we complete our 30 walks and then we graze a paddock and we record the graze date, that comes in here into the number of grazings. And when we record the pre-grazing yield, it all adds into here. Okay? So in this paddock 14, and it comes back to the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. We have the last time it was reseeded, it was in oversown with clover last year, the 6th to 5th, 23. It was grazed 10 times. It produced about 11.3 ton of dry matter, and it got about 137 kilos of nitrogen, 20 kilos of phosphorus, and 109 kilos potassium. So this is a farmer who is doing a wonderful job on PastureBase. He's recording all his fertilizer. He's recording over 40 measures. He's recording all his reseeding events. So he has an absolute wealth of information about his farm on PastureBase at the minute. So, and again, as I said already, the green, in this example, the green is grazing. Okay, so as you can see, paddock 14 has not been, there was no silage taken off it because it was an oversow with clover. He just wanted to graze it all year in terms of to try and bring on the clover percentage in the field. But there is other paddocks here that are yellow that were cut. So the likes of that paddock there now, paddock 21 on the top, was probably cut for 2 cuts of silage.
Okay. And Joseph, the width of the column, that's an indicator of the area of the paddock as well, isn't it?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So the width, the wider the paddock in general, the larger the paddock. So say for instance, paddock 14 there is about 1.46 hectares. You know, the top one there, there's nearly 3 times it. So it's, you know, it's the guts of probably 5 hectares there, 4 point something hectares short. Yeah.
And over on the right-hand side, the column there, that refers to the overall weighted average for the farm.
Correct. So yeah, it's weighted average as opposed it's weighted average as opposed to average. Yeah. So it's for every individual paddock. So then what I like about the annual tonnage, George, is that I can sit down with a farmer at the end of a year or the start of the next year, and we can very, very quickly, even if I don't walk the farm, I can identify a few paddocks here that are poor performing paddocks for remedial action, and that action may be a reseed, it may be soil fertility issues, you know, it may be whatever, might need lime, it might need P and K, it might be heavier soils or whatever like that, and we maybe need some drainage works or whatever. We can make decisions. We can have a look from what the grass is, what the grass is being, or pasture is being produced on farm.
Okay, very good.
So a wealth of stuff there. Okay. And then when we look at our mid-season wage, so if what we're trying to do during the mid-season when we're doing our farm walk, okay, we want to keep the animals in somewhere in around 1,400 kilos of dry matter per hectare. Okay, very, very simply, if you're there sitting at your table or whatever, it's about 3 fists high of grass. Okay, because we know from research done down through the years that if we can keep our cows in around 1,400 on a 21-day rotation, 18 to a 21-day rotation, we're going to keep good quality ahead of them so that they'll be able to perform to a high level off a grass-only diet or a grass plus low meal diet. Okay, so Largely in those cases, we will probably be aiming for 1.5 to 2 kilos a meal throughout the mid-season max. So we're trying to keep this. This is essentially a feed wedge. Okay, so when I say do a grass walk, or you know, it comes back and it produces a grass wedge or a feed wedge for us. Essentially, the paddocks at the top of the ones, the most grass in, where we want to be grazing next, all down to the paddocks we came out of last. Okay, and it's all about keeping this right. And just, it's not in this example, but we'd have a few KPIs down here in terms of the average farm cover, or the cover per cow, and if they are over what we would be targeting, we will be giving the farmer advice to take that paddock for silage.
Joseph, when you talk about pre-grazing cover, that's cover above a certain height, isn't it?
Yes, cover above 4 centimeters.
Yeah. So a 1,300 kilo pre-grazing cover would equate in a total cover situation to about 2,800 kilos.
Correct.
Okay. And I think the PastureBase can accommodate farms that want to use total rather than above 4 centimeters. Yeah.
Yes, it can. Yeah, very, very easy. It's only a click of a button on setup.
Yep. Okay. That's great.
Okay. So I suppose bringing back and moving on. So PastureBase, like very basic from the, I suppose the grass walk point of view. So that's what we said. But there's recording the grass walks and then looking at the grass wedge. But there also is other things that are there that can be very helpful. So big one there is the rotation planner. So as we said, what we don't want to happen in the spring and the autumn is to run out of grass when quantity is the issue. So here's a rotation planner which helps us to map out maybe what percent of our farm can we graze per day to keep, so for instance, now we're in the spring, we would say, we're setting the farm up for a 60-day, 2-month first rotation on the farm. So essentially, if we have 60 hectares, it's a hectare a day on average. Now, there will be some days you graze more, and some days you graze less, but it's as long as the trend is correct and that we can kind of keep the farm reducing, lowering grass on a constant basis, but also protecting the regrowths for the second rotation. So the rotation planner is very important. This, as I said, is our weekly wedge. So essentially, when I'm walking around my farm, I can either do it on the app, or we have an application on the phone, or we can do it on the web browser. If you just maybe record them in a little booklet as you're going around, and we can just enter the covers in there. So there's paddock 1, the area, and the cover. Okay. So again, we would call 50 would be post grazing, and all the way up to 1,500 would be ideally for grazing. Okay. Yeah. And then if we go above that, George, we're probably looking at taking out for a light crop of bales.
Yeah. Crop of bale silage for our audience. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, bale silage. So what that might be is it's just a little bit too strong for grazing, but it is excellent quality for feeding later on in the year if there is a couple of very wet nights, or a grass shortage on the farm, a bit of a drought, something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, a feed budget there, which helps you to plan out again the shoulders of the year. Sorry, I always say shoulders of the year, but yeah, the spring and the autumn. And then we can do, for the very advanced users, we can do a full nitrogen plan with them. Okay, planning out all their chemical N, P and K, and also their organic slurry, I suppose, applications on the farm.
Okay, very good. There's a lot of detail that can be taken from the PastureBase application. There's a lot in it.
There's a huge lot in it, and again, it's really up to the user, George. You can just take PastureBase and record your 30 measures and get the information on grass, your grass supply in terms of keeping in front of your animals. And then as you become a more advanced user in terms of recording the fertilizer, recording the fertilizer and slurry, then maybe going on to some of the nitrogen stuff, your soil fertility, all that can be built into it. So there's a huge amount there, but it all depends on I suppose, the skill level of the operator. While we
were talking there, Joseph, an email came into me from Moore Park, and I'm on a circulation list just to say that today they sampled grass at Moore Park, and the dry matter of that grass was 17.5%. It was taken at 9 this morning, which would be 10 a.m. local time. So an hour and a half later, we know what the dry matter in a particular area is. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Joseph, I interrupted you there.
No, you're grand. No, it's perfect. No, and again, that's great information to have out, and we'll have hopefully 3 or 4 more of them by the end of today from different research centres around the country. Yeah. So, so I suppose what the next development, or what they've been working on in Moore Park, and INRAE over the last couple of years, is the grass growth model in terms of predicting grass growth forward. Okay. Yeah. So, and this has, I suppose, gives us huge information, and will give farmers huge information and more confidence in terms of making decisions on their farm, okay, in terms of maybe trying to identify whether they're going to have a surplus the following week or a deficit, and maybe if there's a surplus, they can maybe take out a paddock that they were for silage that they were unsure of, or if they can feel maybe they're predicting maybe a deficit in terms of a drought or poor weather, that maybe they can get in that little bit quicker with some supplement feed to react that week quicker, which can make an awful difference. Okay, so we have around 87 farms around the country that all have weather stations. Okay, so they will have soil temperature being recorded, they will have air temperature obviously, and rainfall, all that sort of the information being recorded. We will have PastureBase. All these farmers are required to record all their fertilizer, and all their organic slurries has to be recorded as well, and they have to do over 40 walks. Okay, so we have huge information for those farms, and those farms then we can predict forward their grass growth rates. Okay, so this is just an example of one from October a couple of years ago. So again, it's just given a prediction for the week. So if we say the yellow there is Teagasc centres, okay, so we have Clonakilty in Cork, Athenry in Galway, then we're up here in Cavan, okay, and then down here in Johnstown Castle, okay, in Wexford. So and Ballyhaise and Cavan. So there's 4, and then so they're research stations, and all the rest are commercial farmers. Okay, so there definitely is there's one per county, so which gives us huge information going forward. So predictions are completed twice a week. Farmers have the weather forecast, and 80% of farmers changed their management. What we've seen over the last few years, as this has been piloted, 80% of the farmers have changed their management due to the prediction that they get for their farm. And now every farmer, when they open their PastureBase on a week, will have a prediction based on, it'll be loosely based off the farmer that's in their county, but also then it will be what fertilizer they have spread that week, and then what the weather conditions. If their soil fertility goes in there, it will be based around that too. So there's an awful lot of information that's going into that.
Okay, very good.
And again, that's kind of the week, what it shows there. So we have the Grass 10 newsletter, which is pretty much, Grass 10 is like the extension arm, I like to call it, of PastureBase. Okay, so we take that and we try and disseminate that information back out then to PastureBase users, to industry, farmers, everyone that is signed up to our weekly newsletter. So it comes out every Tuesday afternoon. And if anyone would like to be linked to it, if you just go to Grass 10 or send an email to grass10@teagasc.ie, or just go on the Grass 10. So it's literally GRASS and then 10 and just go to subscribe on the homepage there. You'll see subscribe to weekly newsletter, and you will get all that information there. So So then just very simply there's what the grass growth was for the week that, for all the farmers that have recorded. So we will then produce that map, and then this is where the grass growth prediction then. So we'll then have, say, these farms here predicted to grow 20% more than last week. 1 or 2 farms up here will grow less than last week. So it's a very interesting stuff to work on. Okay.
Yeah.
So some of the future challenges, George, I think, is just maybe to optimize the integration of the newer modules that are happening all the time, but keep it a very fast app, keep it a very fast web browser, okay, from a simplicity point of view, keeping ahead of some of the on-farm trends, okay. There's more zero grazing going on in the country, so that has to be factored into the I suppose the weekly wedge if there is zero grazing coming in the spring and the autumn. Maybe a bit of liquid fertilizer has kind of become a little bit of a thing on a small number of farms over the last 2 or 3 years. That has to be factored in. Integrate the prediction model, and a few other different bits and pieces going on in the time. Enhance the notification system, and then exploring options for utilizing PastureBase data to ensure good feedback to researchers, which then allows, it's that kind of a circle all the time. It's farmer information back in to Chagas, then to research, then and back out again in that circle. Yeah. And I suppose that's just a shears there that we would use, and a plastic bag. So we'd have a quadrant put down on the ground on a representative area of the farm. You'd cut and weigh and put it into the bag and weigh it in terms of the PastureBase there when it's open. The app, as you can see, is open there on that man's phone, and all the information, the farm walk can be done there and then on an offline app, so you don't even need to have internet, and there, we done it there and then. And I suppose a little line that we like to use when it comes to PastureBase and grassland measurement in Ireland, you cannot manage what you don't measure. Okay, so by measuring grass, it gives us a huge amount of information, both from a farmer point of view and from an industry point of view, in terms of to drive, I suppose, efficient, low-cost dairy farming here in Ireland.
Okay, very good.
Thank you very much.
Your presentation. Thanks very much, Joseph. Written on the slide, creating an environment when farmers, there's a comment in here in the comment box there, Joe. Written on a slide, creating an environment where farmers can ask questions. So is it an open forum available then for the practice users of it, Joseph? Or how do they get in contact with, say, the experts or researchers? How does that happen?
Yeah. So again, we're completely farmer driven. Like PastureBase is completely farmer driven. We have there's steering groups, but it's pretty much open. It's open-ended. We want feedback from farmers all the time. If there's something that they feel is not coming in right into PastureBase, or there is, new modules that they wanted added, we're for farmers here. So anything can be changed. Things can be upgraded. Yes, if they make sense. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's completely open. We want this. We want more and more farmers on this. So we work with farmers, and we have farmers then that we would nearly we would have early adopters of new technology on PastureBase. So we would have 15 or 20 farmers that we would go to all the time, and we would give them a test of something new and get their feedback on it. Should we release this? Should we not release this? And we can go from there then.
Joe, you didn't mention anything about the grass pods that are operating and are being done basically to get people using PastureBase more. So you run a large number of those grass groups around the country. Maybe how does that work, and how does that feed into the thing? And it's part of the direct connection that Jocelyn is asking about.
Yeah. So again, we have grass groups or grass focus groups, or sometimes they can be clover focus groups that I suppose myself and my colleagues in Grass 10 run. And so they're pretty much like, farmers will have their monthly discussion group meeting, and with their own group. But what we're trying to encourage people to do is maybe 5 or 6 times a year come to another group meeting per month with a grass only focus, okay, which then focuses on measuring. It focuses on the key. So we will walk more than half a farm, do a lot of measuring, measure as we go, get people measuring. So some people there might be completely new to them to measuring grass. And then, so we get that done, get an average farm cover for the farm, make decisions off that, work with people on allocating correct amounts of grass to cows, work with people on grazing infrastructure where they can make improvements on grazing infrastructure. Excuse me. So yeah, so we run these meetings monthly, or some groups that only run maybe once every 6 weeks. But yeah, so this helps us then to get more people measuring every month and bring new people on board with us all the time.
Yeah, so to get direct contact between the farmer and the people who are kind of pushing or promoting PastureBase, there are monthly meetings that farmers can attend, and we have large numbers attending those, and it's helping to support its use.
Yeah, it's boots on the ground, as we say.
Boots on the ground. Have we any more questions that you'd like to ask Patrick at this stage? Or Joseph, I should say, not Patrick. Yeah. Are we okay? And Joe, if a farmer in Luxembourg or France wanted to use PastureBase, is there anything to stop him, or how would he go about doing that? How could he do that?
Is a good question. A good question. I don't think there's anything stopping them, is there?
There's no barriers there.
No, there's no barriers.
So what website would they go to, Joe?
So it's just to www.pasturebase.ie, or just Google in. There's a PBI. It's you just Google PastureBase, it'll come up anyways in Google. PastureBase Ireland.
And as far as we know, anyone could decide they wanted to record on PastureBase for 2024. Anyone here or any of their friends, and they could record their grass or forage growing on their farms for the year using the program and make decisions on the basis of that as well. Yeah,
I don't think there's anything stopping. So. And again, it's free. It's free. It's completely free. A thing I didn't mention. It's completely free for Irish farmers to use. So
and they could also sign up for the newsletter, the weekly newsletter as well from Ireland, to hear what's going on Irish pastures. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to say that again, if you Google Teagasc, so TEAGASC grass 10, and the subscribe button will be on the top of the homepage there if you want to get the weekly newsletter.
Maybe what we do, Joe, is we'll send on the details to Caroline. She can put them in as a link or something with the recording today.
Perfect. That's no problem. Yeah, I'll do that.
Another job for you, Caroline. Sorry.
I will do that.
That's great. Okay, everybody. I suppose, Caroline, with that. Oh, yeah. Someone comes in here. Yeah. It's Jocelyn came in again. I think that a project in France is underway to build such a national observatory. Yeah, it'll be linked into INRAE, Jocelyn. I haven't seen it in place yet in France, but I'd say it's well on its way. So in the meantime, you could join the PastureBase Ireland for a year and then jump back across to the French one when it comes on board. All right, Caroline. Thanks very much, Joe, for your time this morning and for a very good explanation of what's going on the PastureBase application. And thanks, Caroline, for maybe organising the event for us.
Yeah,
okay, everybody. Safe farming.
Bye. Have a nice day.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Right. Talk to you later. Sam, George.
Thank you.